Today's topic is modern India. Let's start the quiz. Answer is B. Explanation. The Indian Home Rule League of Bal Gangadhar Tilak was launched in April 1916 and Home Rule League in September 1916 by Annie Besant. Joseph Baptista was the first president of the Indian Home Rule League, established in April 1916. Answer is C. The correct sequence is as follows. In 1906 Muslim League formed, and on 28 July 1914 World War I begins, and in 1916 Lucknow Pact, and in 1919 the Khilafat movement started. Answer is D. From 1772, Warren Hastings served as Governor-General of Fort Williams, and the Regulating Act was passed after his arrival. The important events under his rule include trial of Nandkumar and Raja Chait Singh of Banaras, codification of Hindu and Muslim laws, First and Second Anglo-Maratha Wars, Second Anglo-Mysore War, abolition of dual system and quinquennial settlement of land revenue, foundation of Madrasa Aliyah, 1781, and Asiatic Society, 1784. He implemented several reforms in all walks of administration. The Regulating Act 1773 and Pitt's India Act, 1784 were important acts passed during his tenure. Answer is B. Explanation. One section led by C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru and Admiral Khan wanted an end to the boycott of legislative councils so that the nationalists could enter them to expose the basic weaknesses of these assemblies and use these councils as an arena of political struggle. They wanted to end or mend these councils, that is, if the government did not respond to the nationalists' demands, then they would obstruct the working of these councils. Their only intention was to use the councils as arena of political struggle. They had no intention to use the councils as organs for gradual transformation of colonial rule. Those advocating entry into legislative councils came to be known as the Swarajists. Answer is A. Explanation. The Motilal Nehru Report 1928 was a report by a committee headed by Pandit Motilal Nehru. This committee was created when Lord Birkenhead, Secretary of State of India, asked the Indian leaders to draft a constitution for the country. The report, which demanded a dominion status for India, was considered by the Congress. The main points of the Nehru Report were as follows. India would be given dominion status. This means independence within the British Commonwealth. India will be a federation which shall have a bicameral legislature at the centre, and ministry would be responsible to the legislature. Governor-General of India would be the constitutional head of India and will have the same powers as that of British Crown. There will be no separate electorate. The draft report also defined the citizenship and fundamental rights. Answer is B. To break the deadlock between the two major political parties in India, C. Rajagopaláchari, Indian National Congress member, who was close to Mahatma Gandhi, proposed a set of plans called the CR Formula, or Rajaji Formula. Proposal was as follows. The Muslim League would join hands with the Indian National Congress to demand independence from the British. Both parties would cooperate and form a provisional government at the centre. After the war, a commission would be entrusted with the task of demarcating those areas with an absolute majority of Muslims and a plebiscite to be held in those areas where all the inhabitants, including Muslims and non-Muslims, would vote on the basis of adult suffrage whether to form a separate sovereign nation or not. In case of partition, joint agreements to be made for the safeguarding of defence, communications and commerce. The above terms to come to fruition only if Britain transfers full powers to India. Answer is D. Explanation. Political causes were discontent generated by East India Company's conquests, doctrine of lapse, humiliation of the mulls, suspension of pension of Indian princes and rulers. Administrative causes were bitter taste of the rule of law, unpopular British administration, exclusion of Indians from administrative posts. Economic causes were ruin of the mercantile class, destruction of Indian manufacturers, pressure on land, impoverishment of peasantry. Socio-religious causes were social exclusivist social legislation, missionary activities. Military causes were service conditions, dental of allowances, the General Service Enlistment Act. Immediate causes were in January 1857, a rumour began to spread in the Bengal regiments that the greased cartridges contained the fat of cows and pigs. The sepoys became convinced that the introduction of the greased cartridge was a deliberate attempt to defile their religion. The cow was sacred to the Hindus and the pig was a taboo for the Muslims. The sepoys refused to use these cartridges. The authorities regarded this act of defiance of the sepoys as an act of insubordination. The action was taken against them. Answer is C. Explanation. Henry Vivian de Rosio, whose father was of Portuguese origin and mother an Englishwoman, joined Hindu college as a teacher. Within no time he drew around him the best boys of the college, whom he constantly encouraged to think freely and to question all authorities. De Rosio promoted radical ideas through his teaching and, by organizing an association for debates and discussions on literature, history, philosophy, and science. He was supporter of freedom of speech, thought, and education of women. Defied social and religious conventions. He stated that radical views were the roots of religious philosophy. He ridiculed old social traditions and customs and debated the existence of God. Answer is B. Explanation. Born as Keshav Gangadhar Tilak in 1856 in Ratnagiri, modern-day Maharashtra, he was one of the founders of the Fergusson College in Pune. Tilak joined the Congress in 1890. He was opposed to moderate ways and views and had a more radical and aggressive stance against British rule. He was part of the extremist faction of the Indian National Congress and was a proponent of boycott and Swadeshi movements. He published 2 papers, Kisari, in Marathi, and Maratha, in English. He was fearless in his criticism of the government in these papers. He was one of the founders of the All India Home Rule League, along with Annie Besant and G.S. Kappad. For his political ideals, Tilak drew heavily from the ancient Hindu scriptures. He called for people to be proud of their heritage. He was against blatant westernization of society. He transformed the simple Ganesh Puja performed at home into a social and public Ganesh festival. Answer is B. Explanation. Eka movement or unity movement is a peasant movement which surfaced in Hardoi, Baraig, and Sitapur during the end of 1921 by Madari Parsi, an offshoot of non-cooperation movement. The main reason for the movement was high rent, which was generally higher than 50% of recorded rent in some areas. Oppression by Fiqatas who were entrusted to collect rent and practice of share rent also contributed to this movement. The Ika meetings were marked by a religious ritual. Unlike the earlier Kaisan Sabha movement that was based almost solely on tenants, the Ika movement included in its ranks many small zamindars who found themselves disenchanted with the government because of its heavy land revenue demand. Thank you, and please subscribe to channel, and you can visit our website, and you can join our Telegram channel or contact us on WhatsApp number given here.